Welcome to the Weather Insights Tropical Update. I'm meteorologist Scott Pitney along with meteorologist Jeff Lindner. And we just recorded a podcast a couple of days ago, and we wanted to update because there have been some changes in the Atlantic. We're now seeing three systems, all yellow, no more orange, Jeff. We'll start with the one on the right there. Now, disturbance, we're calling this disturbance number one, has a 30% chance of development in the next 7 days. And notice that arrow kind of stretches out a little bit far from the X. And so the development is not expected to happen until it gets into that less sheared environment. I'm guessing is why they have that chance outline there just east of the Yucatan and then into the southern Gulf of Mexico. So that one now with a 30% chance of development. And then we have system number two there in the middle with only a 10% chance of development in the next 7 days. And then finally, system number one, fresh off the coast of Africa with a 20% chance of development. So no surprise here, Jeff, that we were seeing the intertropical convergence zone active. What is a bit of a surprise, though, is how none of these have become named storms, and we haven't seen anything develop in the last few weeks, although it's off the radar now. Speaking of radar, we do have what was a disturbance still off the coast of Texas. I feel like I've been talking about this thing for days on end, and it just keeps repeating the pattern. It keeps throwing all this rain on the coast, a lot of heavy rain from earlier in the week around Louisiana, the upper Texas coast, south of Beaumont, then Galveston yesterday, and now it's slid down to Matagorda. And you can see it there along the crossroads all the way down to Corpus Christi, but the bulk of the rain still staying offshore. And we're still seeing that tight gradient between heavy rainfall staying offshore, which is a good thing, of course. But we do have a flood watch in effect for coastal counties because of this rain just kind of sitting there and expected to stay there at least through Friday, when we'll start to see these systems move out and expect to see some dry air starting to push into southeast and southern Texas later on for this weekend.
Yeah, this has been a mess, and I don't
Yeah.
know how else to explain it really. I mean, this is what you can get around here in September when the steering is very weak. So we've had this surface trough and at times weak low that's kind of meandered up the coast and down the coast. Today it's down the coast in this area, and it's going to meander back up to the northeast as we get into tonight, tomorrow. And that's really what we're going to kind of focus on is as you can see here, everybody's looking for the big closed low out here, and there's just not one. This is a trough, and you can see you have northeasterly winds all along the coast this morning, easterly winds here in southern Louisiana, and then you have easterly, southeasterly winds here out over the Gulf of Mexico. So you can kind of see there is a broad turning of the wind field here in the northwestern Gulf of Mexico, but what you don't see is any west wind. And that would indicate that there is some sort of surface low that is forming out here, and you don't see that. So this is still a very broad trough, and the difference between a broad trough axis and a weak tropical low is not a whole lot, except the fact a tropical low is a little bit more well-defined and closed off, and so you have wind direction from all four of the directions. In this case, we kind of have it from two-ish directions, if you will, and it's very broad. I mean, you're talking from the southern Louisiana coast all the way down here towards South Texas. Could something happen out here? Absolutely. You have a lot of showers and thunderstorms sitting out over the warm Gulf of Mexico. Could something spin up? Yes, we've seen it happen before. Are the chances high? No, they're not high. They're actually very low. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And you mentioned the flood watch that just disappeared and came back up there. Everything in green is a flood watch. So it's really, as you mentioned, the coastal areas from about Corpus Christi up through the Matagorda Bay, right along the upper Texas coast, and then here the two inland parishes in southern Louisiana. And we may actually see some of the heaviest rainfall over the next couple of days over here in southeastern Louisiana as this kind of trough, or if in fact some sort of coastal low develops, kind of moves off in a northeasterly direction. And that's really what we're seeing here with the forecast with the rainfall. This is for the next 48 hours. And so this is through Friday morning. And you can see the bullseye here again over the waters, mainly of the northwestern Gulf of Mexico, and that very sharp gradient inland. of potentially a half a foot of rain, maybe even more down here on the coast. We're talking Galveston Island, Brazoria County, coastal Brazoria County, Freeport, down towards Matagorda, Sargent, and then up over towards High Island. And by the time you're talking I-10 downtown Houston, we're probably close to an inch, if even that. And that's exactly what we saw this morning. Heavy rains near the coast, and as they have spread inland in these bands, they're just not able to hold together and they kind of fall apart. And so we're seeing a pretty good signal there with the rainfall forecasts. And this is another thing we look at is our short range high resolution models and what they're predicting. This is the HREF, or the high resolution ensemble forecast. So it's all of our high resolution models put together. And this
Mhm.
is their output out to about 48 hours and their rainfall totals. And some impressive rainfall potentially here in the northwestern Gulf, anywhere
Yeah.
from 7 possibly up to a foot of rain. And again, what we are consistently seeing is this really strong cutoff and gradient. So potentially a lot of rain on the beaches, like we just mentioned, Texas City, Galveston, maybe even up towards Seabrook and Kemah, back over towards Freeport and Angleton. But then once you get up into Harris County, we're talking an inch or generally less north of our coastal counties. And so kind of a little bit of an unusual pattern. Some of this is we're eventually, as the trough or low slides to the northeast, more and more of southeast Texas will get on that subsidence and sinking air side of it. So it really cuts the rain off as you get away from the coast. And lastly, I'm putting this up here just because it's out there already, and we
Yeah.
fight this all the time. But people are showing a lot of different things of what could happen here in the Northwest Gulf over the next 2 days. This is the HER model. It's one of our better short range models. One thing I will caution everybody with is these high resolution models tend to not do very well in the tropical setting, and so
Right.
they're usually not great on showing development or intensity or any of that type of stuff. You really want to look more at your global forecast models for that type of stuff. But this is kind of the stronger solution of showing the trough here off the coast forming into a closed low. You can see the low forming up here and then moving east, northeast, or northeast towards the southern Louisiana coast. Again, is it possible? Sure. Anything's possible in the Gulf of Mexico in September over upper 80-degree waters and a lot of showers and thunderstorms. Is it likely? It's not likely. Does it change the impacts? No, it doesn't change the impacts. It's even if something were to happen on the coast or offshore, the main impact is going to be the rain, some gusty winds. We are going to see some winds tomorrow, 20, 30 miles an hour along the coast. It's not going to be a great day down there. Surf is going to be elevated. We even get a little bit of elevated tide. But this is not a big tropical system threat that we're facing. It's really just some heavy rain, street flooding potential right along the coast. And like you said, once we get to Friday night and Saturday, we get a little front through here, and we're talking lows in the 60s this weekend. And this mess hopefully gets on out of here to the northeast.
Yeah, and dew points maybe as low as the low 60s or upper 50s. Boy, is always a welcome sight. Little earlier this year, that's something that we usually don't see until the end of September or early October here in southern Texas. So definitely a welcome sight to see. And as those fronts keep coming, at least in southeast Texas anyway, our chances for getting a named storm making landfall become less and less. Those fronts just kind of acting as a blocking mechanism when we get into October. Of course, we invite you to subscribe to the Weather Insights YouTube channel. Subscribe and be sure to share with your family and friends so that they can also stay in touch on the latest of what's going on in the tropics. And be sure to join us for the next Weather Insights briefing. Jeff, thank you very much.